What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Seat Radio. My name is Corbin, and can you believe that I'm about to say what I'm about to say? Red Sox Spring Training starts tomorrow, right? The Red Sox have their first baseball game of the 2023 season. Granted, it's postseason, but still this week. And after a super long and cold off season, that feels absolutely incredible to say. However, our preseason work is not done on this channel yet. In fact, we have a lot of work to do because so far this off season, we've done a couple of prediction videos. We predicted what the lineup's going to look like, what the rotation's going to look like. And while they didn't end up being super accurate, we did do that. We also predicted who the Red Sox may sign in free agency and who the Red Sox may trade for in free agency. But today's video may be the most important prediction yet. And the reason for that is because we're going to try and predict the entire Red Sox season. What do I mean by that? Well, in today's video, we are going to try and predict who the best player on the Red Sox is going to be in 2023, who's the most improved player, who's the player that has the most decline, who are their all-stars, what are they focusing on at the trade deadline, what their best month of the year is going to look like. We're going to talk about if the Red Sox are going to be in contention for any awards, right? Silver Slugger, Gold Glove, MVP, that type of stuff. And obviously the most important one of all, we are going to try and predict the Red Sox record, their place in the AL East, and whether or not they make the playoffs. So a pretty important video today. We are going to hop right into it. But before we do that, do me a favor, make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button as well. Helps these videos out a ton, and it would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one. Let's get into it. Hopping straight into it here with who I think is going to be the best player on the Red Sox in 2023 overall. This answer is so obvious, it almost feels like a cop-out, like I'm kind of cheating, but it is very clearly the guy that they paid $300 million this offseason. It's going to be Rafael Devers. Rafael Devers is going to be the best player on the Red Sox in 2023 and probably for the next 5 to 10 years. Now, Rafael Devers, in my opinion, going into 2023 is going to be much better in 2022. He's going to be fully healthy. He's not worried about any sort of off-field stuff, contracts with his best friend, stuff like that. So he is going in with a clear mind and a full healthy body. And I think that is going to be a recipe for immediate success in this league. He's going to absolutely destroy baseballs this season. This one is an absolute no-brainer. And just because I wanted to have a little bit of fun, I also broke this down into position player and pitcher as well. We know that the best position player overall in 2023 is going to be Rafael Devers. Now, in terms of pitching, I think the best overall pitcher on the Red Sox in 2023, and this may shock some people, is going to be Tanner Houck. Now, the reason for this is because I think Tanner Houck is going to be vital to this team's success. I think he starts the year as a piggyback in the bullpen to either Chris Sale or James Paxton. And I think he really becomes that sort of lights out long relief pitcher for one of these guys, maybe even both, and switching off throughout the season. Now, the reason I chose Tanner Houck over everyone else is not because I think he's going to have the best overall performance in terms of pitching, but he's going to have the most important, saving Chris Sale's arm and making sure that Chris Sale can pitch an entire season along with, or also James Paxton is going to be vital to this team's success. And I don't think that gets done without having Tanner Houck in that type of role. So in my opinion, that's the reason why I am putting Tanner Houck as the best overall pitcher for the Red Sox. Now let's move on to most improved / most declined. In terms of most improved, I went with Garrett Whitlock. Now, Garrett Whitlock didn't really have a bad season last year, especially out of the bullpen. However, most of his season was riddled with injuries, and when he was in the rotation for the Red Sox last year, he created a lot of question marks over whether or not he can actually be a starting pitcher in Major League Baseball. This year, I think he completely silences that crowd, and I think he ends up at the end of the year becoming a guy who could be a second in the rotation type player and really performs up to what we know Garrett Whitlock can perform to. As for decline, I think it's going to be Reese McGuire. Now, this isn't because I think Reese McGuire is going to have a bad season at all, but in terms of actual number statistical decline, Reese McGuire hit .337 for us last year. And I really don't think Reese McGuire is going to do that throughout a full season. I think we're going to see him come back down to earth a little bit, probably hitting around 250, 240 in that range throughout an entire season. So again, do I think Reese McGuire is going to have a bad year? No, but compared to what he did last year in 2022 for the Red Sox specifically, next to impossible that Reese McGuire repeats what he did at the plate. And for that reason and that reason alone, we are going to put Reese McGuire as the biggest decline in 2023. Now let's talk about trying to predict some of the all-stars for this Red Sox team. I think at the end of the day, there are going to be 3 all-stars from the Boston Red Sox, with only one of them starting. I think the starter on the AL all-star team is going to be Rafael Devers. Duh, right? I don't even really think I need to justify that. I think it's pretty obvious that he's going to be at the very least in the running to start this 2023 all-star game. Aside from Rafael Devers though, I think Chris Sale gets a nod at the all-star game this year, and I think Tristan Casas makes it on as a reserve. In terms of Tristan Casas, I just think Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has so much star power in Major League Baseball that he's going to make the all-star team as a starter regardless of how much better or worse he is than Tristan Casas. And for Chris Sale, I think that a lot of people are going to look at him as sort of a most improved type player, a comeback type player, and that's how he's going to make the all-star team. In fact, I almost put Chris Sale as our most improved player in 2023. The only reason I didn't is because Chris Sale really doesn't have anything to go off of last year to improve upon, right? He didn't have any statistics last year aside from 1 1/3 start. So that's the reason I did not put him in most improved. But I do think in terms of selecting pitchers for the all-star game, a lot of people are going to look at Chris Sale and say, look at him and his comeback story. We're going to put him in the all-star game. So at the end of the day, I think we end up with 3 players in the 2023 all-star game. Let's move on to what I think the Red Sox best month of the 2023 season is going to be. And this one is one that you don't really have to predict. You can kind of make an educated guess on based on just their schedule alone. For me, it looks like the last day of March and the month of April seems to be the easiest path to the best month of the season. You're playing Baltimore twice. You play Pittsburgh, Detroit, Minnesota, Milwaukee, Tampa, and you finish with Cleveland, right? That seems like a recipe for me to get off to a hot start. And record-wise, I think this is going to be the easiest path to a positive record that the Red Sox have for the entirety of the 2023 schedule. So in my opinion, they are getting off to a hot start, and record-wise, their best month is going to come in that first month of the season. As for the trade deadline, I think the Red Sox are going to focus on a couple of areas at the deadline, but we're going to try and predict the biggest area of need at the deadline for the Red Sox, because I think personally, optimistically, the Red Sox are going to be, at the very least, the Red Sox are going to be in contention for the dance at the trade deadline. And to me, the Red Sox are really going to focus on bringing in a full everyday catcher. Now, the reason for this is, one, the Red Sox right now publicly have said that they aren't super happy with their situation at catcher going into the regular season. Getting a guy who can be an everyday catcher for you defensively and offensively, in my opinion, could really bring this team up a notch. And I really think that's going to be something they try and target at the trade deadline, especially if they're at where I think they could be at the trade deadline. A catcher could really bring them to the next level. So in terms of trade deadline, I do think there could be a couple of areas that they focus on, but the number one, in my opinion, is going to be that catcher spot. As for awards, predicting awards is pretty tricky, right? Because for the most part, some of the Gold Gloves don't really make sense. Sometimes Silver Sluggers don't really make sense. So it's hard to predict which way people are going to vote in terms of awards at the end of the year. But I do think the Red Sox are in the mix for a couple. I think there are a couple of players on this team that could be in the mix for Rookie of the Year. I think Yoshida has a really good shot at it. I think Brian Bayo has a really good shot at it. I think Tristan Casas has a really good shot at it, right? And I have a feeling a couple of those guys are going to be mentioned in the top 3 for Rookie of the Year voting. But ultimately, I think Tristan Casas comes away with it and wins a Rookie of the Year. I have a lot of faith in Tristan Casas from what I saw at the Major League level last year. I really think he fully blossoms this year in a full-time first base role. Outside of Rookie of the Year, Devers, in my opinion, is going to be in the conversation, maybe even top 3 in MVP voting. The only reason I'm not going to say out loud that I think Devers is going to win an MVP is simply because Shohei Ohtani exists, right? And he's in the AL. It's so hard to say that Devers is an MVP winner when Shohei Ohtani is still playing baseball. So on top of that too, you have Mike Trout, who's healthy as well. So I'm not going to fully predict that Devers wins an MVP award, but I will say I think Devers will be in that race come the end of the year. But I do think Devers does come home with some hardware. I think he wins a Silver Slugger, and I think Yoshida wins a Silver Slugger as well. I don't know if Yoshida can do enough defensively and power-wise to win himself a Rookie of the Year award, at least this year, but I do think he's going to hit 280 to 310, somewhere in that range, and I think that's going to be enough to win him a Silver Slugger in left field. As for Gold Gloves, I think we have two candidates for Gold Glove. I think Tristan Casas is a fantastic defender, and looking around the AL, there aren't a ton of really great defensive first basemen, so I think he wins one, and I think Kike Hernandez wins one at shortstop as well. And this may be way too optimistic, but I think Kike Hernandez is putting in a lot of work at shortstop this season, and I think he's going to play a majority of the games for the Red Sox at shortstop this season, and I think he really truly focuses on his defense enough to come away with a Gold Glove award. But those are my predictions for the Red Sox awards coming out of 2023. And finally, the moment you've all been waiting for, the biggest prediction of them all. What does the Red Sox record look like in 2023, and where do they place in the AL East? Officially, my prediction for the Red Sox in terms of record is going to be somewhere between 85 and 87 wins. Now, that is a complete cop-out, right, to give a range of wins instead of giving one singular number. So I'm an optimistic. I'm going to go on the high end of that and say that the Red Sox win 87 games in the 2023 season. Now, the reason for this, I've already kind of spelled out for you guys. If you want to take a look at that video, it's how the Red Sox can shock the world in 2023. Check out all the statistics and stuff behind it, but I will say quickly, I think this year we are going to see just how important a common goal is amongst a group of individuals. I think we're going to see a lot of career years from people because of that common goal. And I think ultimately that common goal is going to propel them above what everyone else is kind of predicting for their 2023 season. On top of that too, I think the most important factor going into this win total is going to be the bullpen and how much better it looks this year than it looked last year. On paper, we're statistically better than last year, and I think that bullpen's really going to take us up a notch. But again, you got to play games to figure that out, so we're not going to know for a while. As for where they place in the AL East, I think the Red Sox end up in third. I think the Blue Jays win the division with 92 wins. They have an absolute juggernaut of an offense. They added to their pitching staff. I think they are going to be really, really good this year. Really pains me to say, I think the Yankees end up in second place. I think they squeak out second place, getting like 88, 89 wins. Those are absolute bums, but I do think they end up getting there some way, somehow. I think behind us, I think the Orioles come in fourth, right around 84, 83 wins, and I think the Tampa Bay Rays finish in the basement with 80 total wins. So the Red Sox dead in the middle. As for playoffs, I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be really close. The AL is really strong this year, right? There are a ton of different options in terms of wild card spots for the AL in 2023. It's going to be hard for them to get in. Does 87 wins do it? I'm not entirely sure, but because I'm optimistic, because this whole video has been optimistic, I'm going to say they squeeze into that last wild card spot. And from there, who knows, right? It's playoff baseball. I'm not going to predict that they win the World Series or anything, but all I want from the Red Sox this year is to play meaningful games in September and October. I would be super excited about them making the playoffs, but if they are in the hunt in September and October and we have something to really root for, get nervous about, pay attention to in September, that's going to be enough for me. And I think at the end of the day, in terms of this entire season, it's all going to come down to pitching. Now, I've said a couple of times I'm optimistic about this team, and I'm optimistic about the pitching staff. I think they do end up putting it together, and I think they are fairly solid this year, but that could obviously go in the complete opposite direction. One or two injuries to this pitching staff could really derail the entire season, so it's not crazy to say that the Red Sox end up kind of where they were last year, especially if that rotation doesn't do well. If you're more of a pessimist, I could totally see that being your sort of idea as to what the Red Sox season looks like, and again, that's totally fair. It's just depending on whether you're looking at the glass half full or half empty, and I'm sure a lot of you disagree with me right now. So let me know in the comment section down below, what part of this prediction video did you not agree with? My assumption is it's going to be the record, but is it awards? Is it most improved? Is it anything on this list? What do you think the Red Sox entire season is going to look like? Predict it down below. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor, make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. It helps these videos out a ton, and it means a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you watching the Red Sox play actual baseball and in the red seat.